Welcome to today's Cabinet, 3rd of October. My goodness, October. Where's the year gone? Before we start, can you just make sure if you've got your mobiles, most of you have, can you put them on mute or put them on, turn them off or do something so we don't get music in our ears during the meeting? And obviously, when you are speaking, make sure you speak into the microphone so that particularly those that are watching online can hear you. And equally, when you are speaking, it would be quite useful to say who you are, just for the benefit of the public that might be watching this morning. Right, Kate, apologies.
Good morning, Chairman. Yeah, we have apologies from Simon Gibson and Gary Sattle.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting of the 5th of September. I sign those as a true record. I'll take silence as a yes. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Silence as there aren't any. Public participation. There's no public questions or statements today. And questions from members. There are no questions from councillors today either, which must be a first, I would think. Going on to the forward plan. It's a 4-month forward plan, as you know, and if you look at it, you'll see that November is a particularly busy meeting. We've got around 15 items on that, potentially on that agenda. So that'll be a much longer meeting than it's going to be this morning. So anybody got any comments? I'll take silence as no. Thank you very much. Go on to agenda item 7, which would have been presented by Gary had he been here, but in his absence, I'll present this report. It's actually very straightforward because the last DWP update with guidance was back on the 31st of May 2022. Nothing's changed since then. It's a matter of process. We need to bring this forward to reapprove the current policy and set out the next review date as September 2026. That is effectively the recommendation. I don't think I need to say any more. Can I seek a proposer, please? Laura?
Very happy to propose. Thank you.
Seconder?
Makes good sense, so happy to second.
Does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations as set in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We go on to agenda item 8, the Digital Infrastructure and Inclusion Strategy, and I'll hand over to Councillor Jill Haynes.
Morning, everybody. Councillor Jill Haynes. I'm the Councillor for Chalk Valleys. I'm also the Cabinet Member for Corporate Development and Transformation, and that includes the area of digital. Digital is one of our top priorities in this council going forward, and yet it's a situation that we have little control over. And yet, if we don't try to promote the digital agenda, we are going to fall further and further behind as a rural county in the connectivity and the way that people work. Digital is absolutely vital to Dorset going forward for our economy and our jobs. And the strategy is a very good piece of work that's gone through our overview committee, which I'm very grateful for some really good input from them. But we've also had a lot of engagement from outside events and outside people. Going forward, looking to how we deal with health issues and with the ICP, it is something that we are going to need to be up to speed on and ensuring that people can connect when they need to, because that is the future of the way of working in Dorset, as is remote working and providing good jobs for people who live in Dorset but are employed elsewhere. Part of the work was looking at how we encouraged the infrastructure that's needed, particularly for our mobile phones. And in order to do this, we are encouraging suppliers to actually share infrastructure. So at the moment, quite a lot of masts are put up that one belongs to Vodafone, another belong to EE, for example. We're looking going forward, particularly as we move from 3G to 4G, for these to be shareable masts, and we need to be encouraging and working with the providers to ensure that these are appropriately installed. Because with the 3G masts, the amount of data that we can receive, you will notice, is restricted. So you may find in your mobiles that actually the connectivity is nowhere near as good as you thought it was in areas where you thought there was connectivity. It drops out now. And this is just because the masts can't cope with the quantity of data that's coming through. So we need to upgrade to the 4G. And the strategy for doing that is included in this piece of work that we have here. As part of the recommendation, and I did actually pull this paper while we sorted out how we got some funding for this, because we need to be able to fund the staff that provide this and do the work on it. And at the moment, they're all on temporary contracts, or quite a large chunk of them are on temporary contracts. So we're asking for 347,000 per annum in order to do this. And there are options I identified at 3.1 as to how we do this. And one of those is the money that we are getting back from the Openreach contract, which comes back to this council. It was put into that contract some time ago. As it hasn't been spent, it will be coming back to us. And I'm proposing that we actually try and use that funding, or part of that funding that's coming back, to support this situation. I do have a minor amendment to the recommendations. So the first one is reviews the final version of the digital strategy, inclusion strategy, and delivery plan attached. And the second one delegates the Executive Director of Corporate Development, Executive Director of Corporate Development to identify appropriate source of the funding for the 374,000 per annum. This should be, as added to that recommendation, in consultation with myself and also Councillor Gary Suttle, the Cabinet Member for Finance. So if we can have that added to that, then I'm happy to propose the recommendations here today. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Jill. I assume, Kate, you've captured those amendments, have you? Okay. So, seek a seconder? Andrew?
Very happy to second the recommendations and echo the comments made by Councillor Haynes. I think we all recognise the importance of Dorset being on the front foot as we go forward with technology. And of course, we also want to see its effective use in areas of social reform and help with inequalities across our community and to address social isolation where it exists.
Thank you, Andrew. Before I open up to the Cabinet generally, any comments from non-executive colleagues in the room? If not, Cabinet? Any comments from Cabinet? Are we happy to accept the recommendations as set out? So I don't hear anyone or indicating, so does any member disagree with the recommendations in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved, subject to the amendments that Jill's set out. So we move on to agenda item 9 now, the consultation on the national plan making reforms. David Walsh.
Thank you, Leader. I am Councillor David Welsh, representing the Gillingham Ward and Cabinet Member for Planning. As we all know, there are major plan changes to the planning system with the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill and the National Planning Policy Framework. The Government are currently consulting on changes on how local plans are prepared. The production of a local plan is important for the Council as it guides how the area will evolve, reflecting the Council's aims and priorities for Dorset. Responding to the Government consultation on changes to the local plan making process is important for the Council, and it is therefore recommended that a response to this consultation be sent by the deadline of the 18th of October. The LERB proposes a number of changes to the planning system and is currently passing through Parliament. There is uncertainty over when this bill will receive royal assent. However, the expectation is that the changes to the planning system will be put in place by late 2024. This consultation sets out a number of proposals related to the amendments to the planning system, including a new framework for the preparation of local plans and some associated changes. Further regulations will be required once the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill receives royal assent, and this consultation seeks input into the process so that regulations, national policy and guidance can be prepared. This current consultation follows on from the previous consultation on the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill reforms to National Plan Policy, which took place earlier this year. A response to this consultation was agreed by Cabinet on the 28th of February and submitted to DLUC. The consultation focuses on changes to the approach for preparing local plans, including minerals and waste local plans, with the aim of implementing a more streamlined and focused approach. Local plans should be shorter and more digital in their presentation to enable more people to engage more easily. They should be focused on telling the story of how the area should develop over time, setting out the type, location and timetable for development. The proposals suggest that local plans should ensure that sustainability is a golden thread running through the plan, directing development to suitable locations. Establish a local distinctive vision, set out the amount, type, location and timescale for development, meeting key economic, social and environmental objectives. Include a key diagram, a representation of the plan's spatial strategy, and only include policies to reflect local characteristics. Include a digital policies map, which should be kept up to date, and include monitoring and reviewing arrangements. I would like to thank Terry Sneller for all the work that he did in these responses. There are 43 detailed questions with 43 detailed responses, and I'm not going to go through those because I know you've all read these already. And I'd like to thank Terry Sneller for doing all of this work and wish him a speedy recovery from hospitalisation that was not expected. So, good luck, Terry. So the recommendations are that the full response to the consultation questions, as set out in appendix to the report, be sent to the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, DLUC. The response welcomes the proposed amendments that simplify the plan-making process, but expresses concerns over the tight timetable for preparation of a new style local plan. So, thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, David. I assume you're moving the recommendation. You are, okay. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Byron. You wish to comment? No? Oh, Cabby. Okay, thank you very much. Well, before I open up to the Cabinet, any colleagues in the room not on the Cabinet wish to comment? Not on the Cabinet. Not on the Cabinet? No? Les Fry.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Stomp had a very interesting email sent to her yesterday, and I don't chance you've not had the chance to read it yet, about from the Dorset Deserves Better thing. It's interesting that the numbers that the local plan is being based on of houses is wrong and incorrect, and I wonder whether there's any early response to that at this time.
Before you respond, can I suggest, Les, it's suggested that they're incorrect as opposed to being factually incorrect. We need to verify that. They may or may not be right, but Jane, do you want to comment?
I was going to make a similar comment to you. Thank you. I haven't had a chance to read through it all, but obviously it's their response to a survey of which there have been thousands of responses. So obviously we'll be going through all of that, and then all of the comments will be put together, and a report will be coming through based on responses in December.
Thanks for your question, Les. It's really helpful because basically, I think we should encourage healthy involvement with people outside the council in testing some of this stuff. It's very, very important. I got it. It's very, very important that we come out with a really good plan at some point at the end of next year. That's the intention, and we need to make sure it's factually correct. Now, I think I've got Sherry Jesperson online.
No, she's in the room.
Are you in there? I thought wasn't sure you were going to be here today. Hi.
I made a big effort, Mr. Chairman. Would the portfolio holder just be able to say a word about the implications of the not so much our response, but of the new legislation on the timing of our local plan, our own new local plan, which has already been delayed once by force majeure. So it would be of interest to the public listening to know whether or not this is a further delay and how that rolls forward. Thank you.
For the benefit of the public, before I invite David to respond, we haven't delayed our local plan. we're just doing it differently. And I'm sure he was going to say that anyway, but I've saved him from having to say it. We haven't delayed anything. We're just taking a different approach and looking really closely at all the detail. And David, you can respond about the likely timelines.
I was going to respond similarly, but I was going to start it off with, I'd hate to criticise a lady for her opinions, but there was no delay in any of this. This was the quickest that we could do it with all the obstacles that we had in the way. When you're looking at nutrients and nitrates still, and things like the Weymouth flood areas, we did not have control of these things. But we are still online to have a local plan adopted by spring 2026. And we are going to work straight onto that. So I thank you for the question, but there is no delay. There'll be no further delay. And I'm quite happy that we're going to be starting the EAPs again very soon and pushing on with the work. So thank you, and thank you for the question.
Right, anybody else? If not, I'll go back to the Cabinet. Shane, sorry, I didn't see you.
Thank you. It's just for a point of clarity on the questions. It's quite an extensive report, this, in response. And at question 42, it talks about saving existing plans and planning documents. Do we agree with them saving them? And the clarity is just around, the response was Dorset Council agreed that existing plans and safe policies should remain in force until the new style plans adopted. And I'm just wondering whether or not there's any thought that's been given that it would be perhaps prudent to archive any formal work that was done, because sometimes you go back and this is a living document, has to keep on continually being updated, and sometimes there might have been an idea 5-10 years ago that we can return back to again later. It would be a shame to waste all of that work that was done and not archive it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. I'll get David to respond.
Thank you. Excellent question, even though it was more of a statement. And the fact is that everything that we've collected, every consultation response through the whole process of all local plans we have kept, because we didn't ever want to start off with a blank piece of paper. So we keep all of these things in the archives, and I agree that they're very, very valuable because we might need to go back to those things again. And you being on the EAP, you know we're going to be looking at those issues again, and we're going to be reviewing these things, and past responses from the public are very, very important. Things don't change that quickly. So yes, we have still got those things archived and we'll still use them. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else? If not, I'll go back to the Cabinet. It's been proposed and seconded. Anybody wish to make any other comments? Jill.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the clarity of the responses. And I think it's not easy when you've got questions like this to give succinct responses. And I think somebody's done a really good piece of work here. So congratulations to them.
I agree. I found it quite easy to read because, as you say, real clarity in our responses, constructive stuff as well, right across the board. So well done to the team who did that, and Terry in particular. Right, Cabinet. Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think it's been, as the portfolio holder mentioned, the issues of Weymouth. I think it's also worthwhile mentioning the fact that this isn't just isolated to Weymouth. Councillor Roberts and I attended the Dorset Coast Forum AGM last week, where we were presented with some information from the Environmental Agency on what they are now perceiving to be the coastal erosion issues. There is so much work that's going to happen on that. So I have to congratulate the team that are doing the work on the local plan, because as new information comes in, everything changes. And it's a fairly fast-moving project, although it seems to be long-winded. But the detail is so important that we get it right. So I thought I'd just highlight the fact that although it's Weymouth mentioned, the rest of the coastal erosion is under consideration.
Very good point, Ray. Thank you for that. Any other member of the Cabinet? Any member of the Cabinet disagree with recommendations? As set out in the report, in that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Go on to agenda item 10, Blandford and Neighbourhood Plan Review. David Walsh.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor David Welsh, Gillingham Ward, and Portfolio Holder for Planning. And for the last, since 2011, and since Mr. Pickles had the wonderful idea, I've been a neighbourhood plan champion, firstly for North Dorset and then for Dorset. And it's with great pleasure every time we get a new neighbourhood plan come forward or a review of a neighbourhood plan. So the Blandford Neighbourhood Plan was formally made by Dorset Council on the 22nd of June 2021. And in March 2022, the Blandford Plus Neighbourhood Plan Group decided to review the made plan. A consultation exercise determined that local residents felt that there was no obvious need to amend the plan significantly. The headline findings were that residents favoured the approach of the modifications, with suggestions being submitted to aid the assessment of locally listed building candidates and the preparation of a design code. And I must say, I'm very impressed with the design code. You'd very rarely get one coming alongside with a neighbourhood plan, but this is an excellent piece of work, so I do congratulate them. The modified plan and its associated documents were subject to formal consultation on the 14th of April to the 26th of May. And Dorset Council subsequently made arrangements for an independent examiner of the plan review as required. The examination was conducted by David Hogger, and his report on the plan was published on the 1st of August, concluding that subject to 3 modifications and other minor non-material updates, the modified plan could proceed to be adopted by Dorset Council. The examiner has concluded that there is no statutory requirement for a referendum in this instance, given the limited nature of the changes proposed to the plan. The modified plan, once made, will replace the existing Blandford Neighbourhood Plus plan. The recommendations, Leader, are that the Council makes the modified Blandford Plus Neighbourhood Plan 2011 to 2033, as set out in Appendix A, part of the Statutory Development Plan for the Blandford Plus neighbourhood area. And equally importantly, in B, that the Council offers its congratulations to Blandford Forum Town Council, Blandford St Mary Parish Council, Bryanstone Parish Council, and members of the Neighbourhood Plan Group in producing a successful neighbourhood plan review. And the reason for the recommendation is to formally make the modified neighbourhood plan part of the statutory development plan for Blandford Plus neighbourhood area. And I would just like to say and remind people, Leader, that even with Gillingham, when I was involved with that, it was meeting once a week for 6 years. This is one hell of a job that people do here. And when Mr. Pickles had the idea, how he thought that non-professional planning officers could write planning policy, was that a genius idea? Or perhaps it wasn't. But I don't know how many neighbourhood plans we've got in Dorset. We can't find that out. But we have 33, but that doesn't say with regards to the rest of the country. But nationally, we're right up there. And I am so proud of what our local residents are doing. So I'll shut up wittering now, Leader, and propose the recommendations.
Thank you very much, David. I know you feel quite passionately about the work that goes into these neighbourhood plans. Can I have a seconder, please? Laura's seconding. Laura Beddoe is seconding.
Thank you. Yep, delighted to second this. It's absolutely enormous amount of work goes into neighbourhood planning, and I think it's brilliant. So very happy to second. Thank you.
Any comments from those members who are not on the cabinet? Sherry. Knock. And then Sherry, yeah.
Thank you, Leader. This has been an excellent example of parishes and towns working together and coming together to form something that not only protects but enhances the local area, rather than trying to stop development, which we hear people asking for a lot of the time. This tries to direct it and design it so it works for all of the surrounding areas. It's an excellent piece of work, and special mention has to go to Roger Carter, who has been working on this since the day it first started and has done some amazing work. So my wholehearted thanks go to him, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Knock. Sherry?
Yes, Councillor Sherry, just from the Hillforts and Upper Tarrants ward. And I'd like to particularly express my thanks and appreciation of the work in Bryanstone, a very small community that has contributed fully to this process and has worked very, very hard. They haven't got anything like the resources to call on of some of our larger towns, but they've contributed wholeheartedly, and this is a superb piece of work that everyone has done together, and it has drawn the town of Blandford and the villages closer together, which is always a good thing. So I'm delighted that you're going to support it this morning, and I would commend everyone who's contributed to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Right, I can't see anybody else. It's been proposed a second in. Member of the Cabinet wish to speak on this item? No? Okay, so nobody disagrees by the sound of it. So in that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Right, we move on to agenda item 11, the Ofsted regulation support and accommodation for 16 to 17-year-olds. Byron.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Byron Quell, Blandford Forum Ward, portfolio holder for children, education, skills and early help. Just an apology, Leader. Teresa Levy, the Director of Children's Services, was going to sit in today, but is on a national call of importance at the minute. So I'll try answer as many questions as I can. Leader, this regulation of supported accommodation for 16 and 17-year-olds. The report author, Claire Shields, Corporate Director for Commissioning and Partnership, and I just would like to thank her for all the work she has done with this particular report. It says everything quite straightforward in the report, Leader. As you'll note, the recommendation to Cabinet is that Cabinet adopt the approach of Ofsted regulation of supported accommodation of 16 and 17-year-olds. A brief summary of the report, Leader. The report provides an overview of the implementation of a new national policy in relation to the regulation of supported accommodation for 16 and 17-year-olds. All providers of supported accommodation are required to register with Ofsted and adhere to a mandatory national quality standards. And it's about time, if I may add, Chairman, this is actually good result. Ofsted proposed to begin inspections of supported accommodation and provision in April 24. You'll note along reporting the background of this new regulation and inspection regime, DC's approach to the use of this provision, the current use of such accommodation by Dorset Council, both within our internal fostering service and externally commissioned services, as we progress towards Ofsted registration, which is vitally important for the local authority. Not only is it best practice, clearly we can't not be regulated. I'd like to point out that this has already gone through the People and Health Review Committee. They had the opportunity to comment on this report, Chairman, Leader. The committee recommends to Cabinet that this approach is adopted by Council. The reason for the recommendation is to ensure compliance with the latest legislation and any subsequent regulation statutory guidance. Therefore, Chairman, I'm more than happy to take any questions that members may have.
So basically, you're proposing the recommendation? Okay, thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? No?
Support this.
Comments? Les?
Chair, Les Fry, Dorchester West. It's a good paper. For 16 and 17-year-olds, it's an interesting time in their life. It's both exciting and challenging. I think we're doing the right thing by supporting this. It's a really good paper, and all we can do to support our young people in Dorset is brilliant and great, so I would support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that support, Les. Really appreciate that. Anybody else? I'll open it up to the Cabinet then. Jill and then Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. I think Byron is quite right when he says this is about time. It's amazing that we have gone as long as we have without this registered provision being reviewed and appropriately, look at. It seems you wouldn't put your own 16-year-old out there without somebody really keeping a close eye on how they're looked after and what the accommodation and facilities are like, and we shouldn't be expecting that for the people that we are corporate parents for. So I think this is entirely right, and I'm amazed it's taken this long. Thankfully, we do have a good reputation in Dorset, and it's not quite so bad here, but I know other councils, you wouldn't want to be in that position that you were a 16-year-old living in that accommodation.
Thank you, Jill. Andrew?
Thank you. Yes, I certainly recall in the early days of this council, through the Corporate Parenting Board, we wrestled with the concept of registered and regulated, two very similar sounding terms, but meant entirely different outcomes for our young people. And I know that really, us being ahead of the curve on this piece of national legislation, was that we should very much be seeking a registered provision for all our young people who are our care and responsibility.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else? Right, and I would pick up on the point about the involvement of the People and Health Overview Committee. It's always very useful to get views from colleagues across the chamber from an overview committee. It helps to enrich the quality of our decision-making here. So I'm really pleased to hear that. I'll read does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Then go on to agenda item 13, which is portfolio holders updates and so on. A number of reports have been submitted and they'll be published in due course, and I won't dwell on that. The other things, there are no urgent items and there's no exempt business. So at 10:30, I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.